Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Schaberg here with Consolidated Planning Group, and we are partnered today with Texoma Workforce Solutions, April Martin. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. Today's meeting is being recorded. Everybody that has signed up for this webinar is going to get a copy of today's slides. There are a lot of links in today's slides, so you're going to get a copy of that. You don't have to take notes on everything that you have. If you're joining us by podcast today, you can email us at contact@cpgcares.net, and you can get a copy of today's slides for free. Simply just email us at contact@cpgcares.net. You guys are in webinar mode today, so we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. April is going to be monitoring the chat box. We love your questions. Your questions are good, and if you've got one, probably somebody else has that same question. So don't be shy. Put your questions in the chat box today. We're going to answer as many of those as we can as we go along through this presentation. So Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs planning firm. If you've joined our webinars before, we are glad you're back. We've partnered with April several times over the last few years, and always such a pleasure to work with April. If this is your first time, we're glad you're here. You're in the right place. And we're going to be talking about planning for special needs. And today's topic specifically, we are going to be talking more about college planning for special needs for our loved ones with a disability. At Consolidated Planning Group, we're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We help people put protection plans in place, transition planning, open ABLE accounts, kind of talk about how much do you need to fund a special needs trust? What does that number look like? How do we plan for your loved one when you're gone? A lot of our loved ones will live 25 to 35 years after we're gone, and they'll have care needs once we're gone. So we help people plan specifically for that. I always say I'm baptized by fire. I eat, sleep, and breathe this both personally and professionally. Mom to 4, 2 with special needs, so totally get the journey. I always just like to distinguish between the differences of a special needs planning attorney or an estate planning attorney and a special needs planner, and the differences on each job. So a lot of times people confuse what we do and what the attorney does. And I always put this in short and say that they're the paper and we're the money. They're the legal documents, the guardianship, the special needs trust, the wills, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision-making agreements. We're the money. How do I afford to pay for my loved one with special needs and also spend 25 to 35 years in retirement? How do I know that I have the right money in the right buckets so that way I preserve eligibility for state and federally funded programs that my loved one may qualify for? That's where we come into play. We're that future care plan. So you can have the special needs trust, but if you don't know where the funding is coming from or how it's going to be funded or that it's funded properly, that's a real issue. So we work very closely with attorneys all across the state. We do suggest that when you have a loved one with a disability, your situation is specialized, and we do suggest that you work with a specialist. That includes financial advisors, and that also includes attorneys. So there are a lot of generalist attorneys that can help you in a lot of things, but if they're not nuanced in special needs, they may make mistakes. Just the animal of the Social Security Administration is enough in itself. And those are some of the things that sometimes the attorneys that are not nuanced in special needs, that they don't understand those things. Fewer than 0.1% of all financial advisors in the U.S. focus on special needs planning. So to put that number into correlation, there's 250,000 advisors in the U.S. and about 125 total are nuanced in special needs. So it is kind of a rare thing. So again, today we are really talking about college planning for special needs. There's going to be a lot of information. There's probably more slides than what we can even get to today. But because all those slides have links in them and we're sharing this presentation with you, we didn't leave anything out. Okay. So first things first, when we start thinking about higher education for our loved one with a disability, we have to really think about what is the realistic expectation. Where are we? Where are they right now? And truly trying to meet them where they are, and really keep an open mind of all of the options out there. As parents, we may have our hopes set on X, Y, Z, and it might not be in the cards right now. It might not be not now. It might just be later. I say a lot that a lot of our kids, granted, we have kids with disabilities that are academically gifted and advanced, and we have other kids that have learning disabilities, and from a maturity perspective, they could be 2 to 4 years behind their peers, maybe even more. So I think it's really important to meet them where they are and just realize that they're really not behind, they are where they are. And when we put them in situations where they're not ready for, then they don't have the successes that we want for them. So it's okay. Whatever the path may be, if we take some time to get where we're going. We've seen families that have kids with disabilities that graduate at 35. It doesn't matter. If there's a transition program or other programs that are out there, maybe your student wants to go to work. Maybe they're going to be in the VR program. Maybe they're going to be in an apprenticeship program. Those are some of those things that we think about. So we've got transition programs. You can think about living at home versus on campus, trade school, university degree programs, certificate programs, and licenses. I am a fan of certificate programs and licenses. The reason I like those is they can get a certification. They can get a license. It could be over a period of weeks or a period of months. It doesn't have to be over 4 years. And a lot of these kids that go get these certifications or licenses are making as much or more than what other people are with a 4-year degree. So I'm not against a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, but I'm just saying if the shoe fits and that's a great fit and you have a student or a loved one that's a hands-on kid, and one of those programs might be a good fit. They can be financially beneficial. So we've got April Martin here today, and she is going to talk to us about VR and some of the programs that are available through Workforce Solutions, like Summer Earn and Learn that some of you may have heard of, or pre-employment training services. She's going to talk to us about those. I would say that those are important programs, and a lot of families don't even know about it. They don't know that they exist, so I'm excited that you're going to be talking about that today. But the key thing is let's just think about where they are and what our hopes are for them and what are they capable of doing right now. Post-high school options for special needs day and transition programs. Guys, you can email us at contact@cpgcares.net. We have a whole list of day and transition programs and residential programs all across the state of Texas, not just in the greater Houston area. So if you want to email us for that list, we'll be happy to send that out to you. That list does have options for places that do take waivers. As you guys well know, a lot of places don't take waivers. There are some out there that do. So if your student is getting a Medicaid waiver, such as HCS, Texas Home Living, CLASS, Community First Choice, that's what we're speaking of there. Okay, so six traits that students with learning disabilities need to succeed. So these are all, and I would say that these are 6 traits that all students need, whether they have a learning disability or they're neurodiverse. The reality of it is, and when you look at the numbers, you guys can Google this, and you look at the numbers, the kids that are college ready at 18, it's a small percentage, right? The number of students that are taking non-credit classes to get up to speed to be able to take 4 credit classes on the college level is a lot. So here are the 6 traits. We've got self-awareness. The Goldberg study said that participants showed awareness of their strengths and weaknesses in both academic and non-academic areas. The ability to be proactive, persevere. Can they take a hit? life happens. You know, I'm forever telling my own kids that life happens. It ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's pretty and sometimes not so much. But how do we pick up the pieces when things fall apart? Goal setting, presence and use of effective social support systems, knowing how to get help when they need it. And a big one is the emotional coping strategies. So what if your student doesn't have some of these? So these are the traits that we know that they need to be successful. And there are a lot of programs out there, such as VR, that's going to help close the gap on some of these things. So if the goal is to get to school and there's gaps, which would be an impediment to employment, they're going to look at these things. But there are a lot of activities and various trainings, vocational evaluations and vocational trainings that can happen that can help close the gaps on some of these things. Okay, so when we start talking about higher education, we start talking about college, community college, university, accommodations and offices of disability are not the same, okay? So we're used to your ARD meeting, your 504, your IEP, your documents that you have in school that show the accommodations that your student gets. Those accommodations don't transfer to higher education, okay? Now, will they take a copy of your IEP and a 504 and look at it? Yes, but they're not necessarily bound to those details and those accommodations. So here's what I learned when I was going through this with my child. And I will say that I have an adult child with a disability that went to college and graduated college, and I was baptized by fire. So when I'm talking about some of these things, I just want you to know you've got to do your homework on this stuff. All schools, community colleges, and universities are not created equally, ever. They are also, their offices of disability are not created equally. They're all very, very different. So what I found when I started this journey, I found it annoying. Maybe it's just me, but I found it annoying that like all schools, the application dates weren't the same. You know, like when do they open? When do they close? What is required? Not required. And they were all very, very different. So I felt like this journey on the college search was a lot because it wasn't uniform across the board. So that was the one key takeaway that I think it is important to know. When I talk about the offices of disability, sometimes they're called disability services. It might be called the ability office. It could have any number of names, but all schools have a disability office. So you're going to want to research on their website. They will have what is required to get accommodations on the higher education level. There'll be an application. It will need to be signed off on by a physician, along with any updated testing that you have. This is another thing. All the schools and what they require as far as the testing and how recent it to be updated is all different too. It's not the same. Now, what I will tell you, the good news about COVID is that a lot of schools have relaxed their guidelines on this, and they're taking older testing. Another thing that I will tell you, when I'm talking about testing, I'm talking about learning and disability testing, neuropsych testing. They might look at the vocational evaluation. A lot of those tests are completed when a student enters into the VR program. Not always, but a lot of those tests are completed. So you may have updated copies of that kind of thing that was completed through VR and paid for by VR. So oftentimes it's 3 to 5 years. If your student has a condition that doesn't necessarily change, maybe they have testing that was 7 years ago, but you have a letter accompanying the old testing from the physician, maybe it's the psychiatrist, maybe it's the PCP, saying that the conditions haven't changed, the accommodations necessary are still the same. I've been seeing this patient for this many years, and I'm signing off on that. We have seen schools accept that. April, do we have a couple of questions?
We do have a question. What is VR is the first question that we have.
Okay, so vocational rehab, and April she's got some slides at the in this presentation where we're going to go deeper on vocational rehab. But vocational rehab, in a nutshell, is for individuals with a disability that have an impediment to employment, and it is designed for them not to be underemployed, for the program to help close the gaps on their impediments to employment so they are employable at, a substantial gainful activity in a nutshell. Would you agree with that, April?
I would. The only other thing I would add is when we say employment, people skip over the option that we help with education as well. We are part of that whole process. We are kind of the bridge from high school. They can enroll at the age of 14 and we go all the way till 22. And then we do have an adult program as well. I can talk more about that later.
And I do love that. So, and we will talk more, but there is, most of the time there is a VR counselor at all of the public schools that's assigned. You can talk to your guidance counselor, you can start VR online, but we'll go deeper on that. But as she mentioned, and I always just like to say this, age 14, that's awesome. So we've got kids that have impediments to employment. They can start as early as 14. It doesn't mean that they're going to work. It means that they're working on closing the gap. We're identifying what the gap is. We're working on closing the gap. So the sooner they will be employable. So I think that's exciting. And a lot of people definitely don't know that. So when it comes to additional accommodations, SAT, ACT, SATcollegeboard.org, ACT.org. They have their own site for disability accommodations. So if your student will be taking the SAT or ACT and they need accommodations, what accommodations am I talking about? Some common accommodations for these tests might be testing in a non-distracted environment, like maybe one-on-one testing. It could be testing over multiple days if we have, issues with that. It could be up to 50% is pretty common, up to 100% more time to take the test because these tests are timed. And so if we have a kid with processing speed delays or learning disabilities or, working memory issues, other things like that, they may offer extra time. I think there's a such thing as a reader. So these are some examples of some of the accommodations that you can get, but prepare early, check their website. They're going to have forms that need to be signed off on a doctor. You're going to have the testing to get those accommodations approved. But the big thing, and I spend a lot of time on this because I would say that accommodations were key to the survival of my daughter in higher education, right? And some of these schools and processing your accommodation requests are not that fast. And so if you wait to the last minute, you could start with your student with both arms behind their back because they don't have the accommodations that they need to be successful. If they're 2 weeks or 4 weeks into the semester and then they finally get their accommodations, the damage is probably already done. So just research this early and know what you have to do this. So let's talk about this ACT and the SAT. I like to talk about this because I'm a fan of not doing unnecessary testing. So a lot of parents like to do the SAT and the ACT just to see where the kid scores, or also it's a good practice for them. It's good for them to take this, and that's okay. I've done that too. But the other thing is a lot of our kids with disabilities have severe test anxiety. So if your child is going to go in through the community college, or if they're going to take a certificate or a licensing program, they don't need the SAT and the ACT. So they just don't need it. So you don't have to put them through that stress if you don't want to. That's completely up to you. Okay. So one thing, put this in the chat box, April, if you will. The FERPA, FERPA, is a necessary document when your students go to higher education, and it doesn't matter if they're special needs or neurotypical. You're going to need the FERPA. The FERPA is going to allow you to call on the child's behalf or get information. They won't give you any information about anything. And I already know the age-old thing, well, I pay the bill, you take my money. And of course they do. But it's the law, so don't argue about it. Just download the FERPA form. It's on their school website. Have your students sign it. One of the things that you guys may want to be aware of as you're doing your search for higher education, some of our families have guardianship of the person of their loved one with a disability. Some schools will not take a student under full guardianship, so you need to be aware of that and research that early. I'm not saying all schools, and there's no way to even categorize which schools do and which schools don't, because they all march to the beat of their own drum. But that is a very specific question that you may want to ask early on if you're considering a particular school. The other thing that we really, really recommend, and whether you have a child with, that is neurodiverse or neurotypical, we do recommend that you have a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney in place when we send them off to school. It is really, really important. They're over 18, and what we have seen is where there might have been a crisis, like a mental health crisis, and the student was taken off campus to a mental health facility. If you don't have these documents, this healthcare power of attorney and power of attorney, guess what? They won't even tell you where they took them. I mean, it's serious. They will not talk to you. They won't tell you what's going on. And so this is real easy to do. I'm not a fan of DIY legal work. Doing it yourself and downloading it online will be better than not having anything at all. I do suggest that you work with an attorney to have these documents. And while you're doing it, make sure that your power of attorney is up to date, your healthcare power of attorney, and any aging parents that you have in your life too, as well. Don't wait for the crisis to happen and then realize, whoops, we should have already done that. April, do we have a few questions?
We do have another question. They say, in addition to supported decision-making. So I think. Yes.
I believe if you're going to, my opinion on the supported decision-making agreement is that you still have the power of attorney and the healthcare power of attorney. The supported decision-making agreement won't even be worth the paper it's written on if there's a 5150 and somebody's sent to a mental facility. You'll have to have that healthcare power of attorney and power of attorney. I believe it should go. There are some people that only have a supported decision-making agreement, but in all cases, it's just too easy to have a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. I suggest it always goes along with that. Any other questions for now?
No, that's it for right now.
Oh, okay. So reasonable accommodation is required if it doesn't pose undue hardship. There is information on the Department of Labor, askjan.org, and of course, the Workforce Solutions, the VR program as well. They can help with these types of things. There's such things as job coaches. There's so many things out there that April's going to talk about as well. Okay, so in-state educational opportunities post-high school. This is where I always say we don't work for them, they don't work for us. These are just programs that we know are out there and available. Some of them are on the list because they have specific programs for individuals with an intellectual disability. Others are on there because we know that they have a great Office of Disability. Another is on here like Non-Pareil Institute. It's not a college, but it's like a coding, like a computer coding, like where they learn that, like they're learning a skill specifically. So it's just various programs that we know that are out there. So what I will tell you on this, because the applications open and close at different times, it can't be uniform for our convenience. You're going to want to research these programs early. I know that we just did an Alvin Community College Strive webinar recently, and it's on our YouTube channel. It's a good one, and we're going to be doing an updated one with Vast Academy as well. Some of these are certificate programs, some of them are degree programs, some of them are licensing programs, but you're going to want to research these early. Make your spreadsheet of the list of the ones that you're interested in. Make a note of when they open, when the applications open, when they close. How many seats do they have? These are just not unlimited enrollment on some of these programs. They only have so many seats. So the whole theory of the early bird gets the worm is probably true with some of these. So, what I did when we were looking, we looked at a lot of schools and we applied at a lot of schools. And what I had done is I had narrowed them down to the degree path that we were looking for. And then I further narrowed them down and put them in order by the quality of their offices of disability. Some offices of disability are very small and run by one or two people, and some have a whole team. We needed audio books, voice to text recognition software. There were certain things that were just non-negotiable that we needed. And so I wanted to make sure that the Office of Disability was awesome. So on my tour, I went to go tour the school, and second stop was the Office of Disability, and schools were deselected by poor offices of disability. So if you need accommodations, it's just worth it to check that out and just really know that, okay? So I mentioned earlier, sure, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. We do have a couple of questions. How about low functioning population is the first one.
So I think each program determines that. So it depends on how low functioning we're talking about. Most of the programs are going to require that the student is independent, are able to use the bathroom on their own. They're not in diapers or things like that. Each program has different levels of independence that are required, and these programs are doing different things. Like some of them might be like horticulture. They might be growing plants or working in a greenhouse. Some of them might be training them for the hospitality industry or the restaurant industry. There's so many different programs out there. So that's why you have to research them all carefully. Some of them might be a 9-month program. Some might be a 1-year program. Some might be a 2-year program. And each one of them have the different requirements. That's a great question. But I want to be clear that these programs that we're putting out there are many, many, many programs in Texas and all across the U.S. for individuals who have a disability with an intellectual disability, which is an IQ below 70. So I guess what I'm saying is don't think that if your child's IQ is below 70 or well below 70, that they can't be helped.
Okay, are you familiar with Pragmatic Studies degree program at the University of St. Thomas in Houston?
I am not overly familiar. We have not done a webinar. I'm familiar. I know about the program, and I know that they had their first graduating class, and I've heard really, really great things about that. And so I think that the one at the University of St. Thomas is definitely worth looking into. It's a newer program out there.
Okay. And then we have, what does it mean if a university is on the list but doesn't have a program name, for example, SHSU?
Sam Houston State has a great Office of Disability. So they might be on there because they have a great Office of Disability. So if there isn't a program next to it, and sometimes, from time to time they add different programs, A&M has multiple programs, UT has multiple programs. I mean, there are really programs. UNT WISE is another program. There's just a lot of great programs. Again, both, community colleges. Don't forget some of the community colleges. There are a lot of community colleges around that are really known for doing a great job for working with individuals with a disability. Some of them have programs, some of them don't. But we've seen a lot of individuals with disabilities graduating from these programs because they work well with them.
Those are all our questions for right now. Do you mind if I add one thing real quickly?
Sure.
Vocational counselors, and we'll go into it more later, can help look for some of these programs as well. If you're working with one, you might mention it to them.
Yes, that is important. I will say, as a parent, whether your student is, going to, be a rising senior, you're like excited, senior year and all this stuff and smooth sailing. They've got most of their classes behind them. They got the easy ride classes for senior year. I always say buckle up, because all this research and all this, all these deadlines and all this, it was so much. And like I said, I was just so shocked that it was not uniform at all. And it was like a part-time job. Your student, whether neurodiverse or, neurotypical, they need help with this, and there's guidance counselors at the local schools and stuff like that, but they're working with hundreds of students. They're not your personal, your college navigator. They can't be that for all people. They might write a referral letter or something like that, but they can't be everything to all people. So start early on this. The TSI, the Texas Success Initiative Assessment. So this is required for all Texas schools, community college, and universities. So if your student is taking a certificate program or a license program, they don't have to do the TSI. They don't have to pass reading, writing, and math. Okay, so the TSI is 3 segments: reading, writing, and math. You could pass writing and not pass reading, or you could pass math and not pass reading, whatever. So there are all kinds of practice assessments out there for the TSI. So this is to be able to take 4 credit classes on the college level. Okay, so they can start practicing for this early. Most of the community colleges have free practice assessments that you can use. I've used the free ones from the community colleges, and I've purchased some. And the purchase ones are better. They're not that expensive. That's my opinion, is that the purchase ones are a little bit better, a little bit deeper, a little bit more accurate. And so if you're wanting to know, well, where do we stand? Could we even take 4 credit classes at this point, as far as if you're thinking of a 2-year or 4-year degree plan? The TSI is necessary. So, and you can schedule to take the TSI at any of the community colleges. They do require you schedule that. Sometimes the public high schools and private high schools will have practice TSI. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. But just know that this is necessary. And again, this is the only test that is necessary if they're going in through the community college for a degree program. Licenses and certificates do not require the SAT, the ACT, or the TSI. Okay, don't have to take those assessments if you're going into licensing or that route. Okay, so thinkcollege.net is a website that I like. It's out-of-state educational options post-high school. There's over 309 colleges and universities that offer post-secondary education programs for students with an intellectual disability. And I know a lot of parents think, have you lost your mind? There's no way that we're sending this kid out of state. And other people have family that are out of state, so they feel safe about that decision. There are a lot of great programs. So I would say there's a lot of awesome ones in Texas, but there are a lot of ones out of state. So don't miss those. Okay, we have another question.
If a student in high school had a modified curriculum, I was told TSIA is required. My daughter has 2 years in Collin College, but is supposed to do the TSIA. Is this accurate?
So a person could have 2 years in a college if they're taking non-credit courses. If they're taking 4 credit courses, that tells me that they already passed the Texas Success Initiative, because the Texas Success Initiative is required. Now, let me think about that. There are some people that have the dual credit program. I'm trying to remember back if we had to do the TSI even for dual credit. I think we may have had to do that for dual credit. It may have been after high school that we had to do the TSI. But the TSI is required for 4 credit courses in the community college and the university. If you are already in the community college and you already have 4 credit courses in math, reading, and writing, then you shouldn't need to take the TSI moving to the university, okay? So it should be able to be transferred. Okay, and we had somebody that said that their child did not take the TSI for their dual course. I think my kids didn't take the TSI for the dual course. It was once they graduated that they had to take the TSI, is I think exactly what happened on that. So Jody Glau, as April mentioned, if you guys are in the VR program, they do services and help and look for various programs. A lot of families say, oh my gosh, Allison, all the stuff that you're telling me, these deadlines and the stuff I need to know, and when I need to do these things. I just want to hire somebody to do that. Well, let me just tell you, again, your situation is specialized. Do work with a specialist if you're hiring a college consultant. There are a ton of college consultants out there. There are very few that are nuanced and working with students with disabilities. Jody Glau, she doesn't work for us. We don't work for her. We are familiar with her. She is an independent educational consultant, specifically working with students with disabilities. She works very closely with your student, with the family. She is very much nuanced and programs all across the U.S. She is not based in Texas, but she goes on site and really tours these places. She only takes so many clients on per year because she is really dedicated and really spends a lot of time with the student and the parents to get the right fit and traveling and seeing schools. So if this is somebody you're interested in, you want to pull somebody in to help you with this journey, reach out to her. You'll be glad you did. You can also search on our website. I'm sure that there is a presentation specifically from Jody about her programs and what she does and how she works and things like that, that lives on our webinar. College living experience. This is a individual post-secondary guidance and instruction, academics and career development, independent living skills, social development. It's also known as CLE. There is a program in Texas. There are programs throughout the United States. Your students live here. And most often they live here and then they may go to the community college. They might live here first and not be in school at all. Maybe they're in a transition program. Maybe they live here first and then they move into a community college or move into a university program. But this is for kids that are neurodiverse that need a little bit of help, but want some autonomy outside of the home and not living under parents, thumb. But this is an expense in addition to the college program. So if they're in, the community college, or if they're in the university, this is a separate expense. Their living expenses there. Bloom Consulting is somebody that we like to talk about. They are also a partner with VR and Workforce Solutions. They do a lot of assessments for VR. They do vocational evaluations. Their website is one that it's worth checking out. But they have a campus connection program, and this is really designed to be kind of a wraparound program for your student with a disability. It's kind of a mentorship program, helping them problem solve and just become more effective and build their skills as a self-advocate and be successful in college. They'll have a connections coach, mentoring, guidance, navigational support. This is $1,000 per month, and this is in addition to any college fees and stuff like that. But as April mentioned, we always say this, and I don't get to say what VR pays for. Even April doesn't say, but if it's in line with the employment plan of getting the person to work, there could be funding through the VR program. So there are things that VR can pay for, and if it's in line with the program, it could be. It's not a carte blanche that everybody gets this or something like that. But if it's in line for your student, it could be covered by them. Okay, April, talk to us a little bit more about Workforce Solutions.
All right, well, Workforce Solutions offices are located throughout the state, and vocational rehabilitation, which we've been talking about and touching on, are what we call co-located within those offices. So it's a one-stop shop. So when you go to a Workforce Solutions office, the whole idea is that you're able to go there for everything so that you can participate in various programs in order to obtain, maintain, or upskill the work that you're involved in. And so at Workforce Solutions here in Texoma, we do have vocational rehabilitation that's co-located. Some of the programs that we offer are resume writing. We have people on hand that can also help you learn how to look for jobs, can help you assess your skills. And we have something called Skill Up Texoma right now, and it's available on other Workforce Solutions websites as well. And it's free training for several certificates. We've been talking about certificate programs. So if you have a child that's particularly gifted with technical things like Microsoft or any other computer-based program or office-based program for office or managerial skills. There are tons of free programs available right now through those Workforce Solutions Skill Up programs that are available throughout the state.
Where would people find those online?
They would go to their local Workforce Solutions webpage, and I do have a locator that's available for that. And I also have a slide at the end of the presentation to be able to get a hold of that. And it should be available on the homepage of any Workforce Solutions office right now.
That's awesome. And because any little skill that they can get it, you know, there's so many different things there are free certifications out there, and any little thing counts as far as them being a little bit more employable.
I do.
Yeah, you know, that was a great question. You've got to answer that one, because there's a lot of confusion on Workforce Solutions and TWC, and it's kind of like one and the same, but they're not. And people are so thoroughly confused on that. April, tell us about the difference between Workforce Solutions and Workforce Commission.
Yes. So the Texas Workforce Commission has several partners to deliver services. Workforce Solutions is one of those, and it's the main one that they use as a hub to insert other programs into. So for instance, you can kind of consider it like the bucket, the holding box that has a standardized offering for anybody who walks in the door. For instance, you can walk in the door of any Workforce Solutions office with or without a disability. You may even have a job and you're just thinking, I'm tired of this, I want something new. And if you just keep saying, can you help me? Can you help me explore? There's going to be somebody there to help fill that gap. And so that's what the Workforce Solutions offices are for. And the way that they're able to fill those gaps is through TWC programs. So vocational rehabilitation is a Texas Workforce Commission program, and it's co-located or housed within most Workforce Solutions offices. I think there's only 2 vocational rehabilitation offices right now that are not co-located in the state of Texas. So if you had somebody who doesn't have their GED and they want to get a GED, we have partners who come out to the Workforce Solutions office from our local college, and they offer those GED programs so that people can come to one office and do everything. So that's kind of the idea behind Workforce Solutions.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I am a fan of these programs.
Yeah, so hopefully that helps answer that question. I have another statement here. It says, I see a location up the street from me. Is that something we can walk into and get started, or prefer an appointment online initiation? Quite honestly, if you're a person that likes face-to-face interaction and that just helps you, I would just say walk in the door and ask them to help you, even if an appointment is required. I know at our local Workforce Solutions office, and I think at most of them, an appointment is not required. You can walk in, and again, I encourage people, if you feel like you're not getting something you need, you feel like there might be more, just keep asking, what else is there? Can you tell me something? Or I don't understand that, can you clarify? Because oftentimes there's another program that people don't know about. For instance, if you have student with disabilities, they can be WIOA program as well, which is a Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act of 2014 signed by President Obama. And they can be co-enrolled in those 2 programs and be receiving benefits. And what one program doesn't cover, another program may.
Can you repeat that program name? It cut out for a minute. I think you had internet instability. Can you say the other name of the program?
Sure, it's the WIOA program. A lot of people refer to it as WIA. It's the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act of 2014. It was signed into by President Obama at the time. It's just got additional programs.
Awesome, awesome. So thank you for sharing that. I know we have some more slides before the end of the presentation for that. So, as we're coming back to, college, there's the thing that hangs over us of, oh yeah, we have to pay for that. It costs money, higher education, university. The FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, it's open. It opens up every year, October 1st for the following school year. Complete this every year, even if you think you make too much money. There's a student login, there's a parent login. This is not a job for your student to do. You have to upload your tax returns or link to the IRS. I mean, it's not a small thing. It's not anything that you can't do on your own, but it is not something that you turn your student loose with and tell them to do it, because they're going to mess it up. So you do need to do that every year, regardless of how much money you make. A lot of the scholarships that are out there require the FAFSA completed, whether you are going to qualify for financial aid or not, okay? The next few slides, we have a ton of slides with a ton of links, but when I think about scholarships, I think about how can you have this offset or completely pay for your student's college, okay? So you have to be intentional. This is break out your spreadsheet. The paid for find a scholarship thing online is not a good idea, okay? It's a waste of money. It's not good. You're gonna wanna research these scholarships early, know when the applications open up, when they close, what is required, do they require an essay? The summer after junior year, I made my rising senior do her essays that summer, and there were tears, and it wasn't pretty. But you know what? It was a good thing. There's 3 essay prompts. You can Google them. You can find out what they are. Get your student to do their essays. Don't write them for them. Guidance counselors know all about that. I mean, they know, admissions officers know when a parent's wrote the essay, so don't write the essay. You can hire somebody to review the essay before it's submitted, but when you have your student do their essays over the summer, if they're going to the university and those essays are required, a lot of essays are required for scholarships. When they're done over the summer, all you have to do is edit them and send them off, okay? Versus senior year starts and it's go time and it's busy and sports start and school starts and testing starts and all this stuff starts. And the applications are opening and closing and people are losing their minds. So just get the essays done in the summer. You'll thank me later for that. Your kid won't, but you will. So research early, know your deadlines. They're all different. 529 college savings plans can pay for college. ABLE accounts, 529A, ABLE can pay for a variety of expenses that could be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability. They can also pay for college. And as April mentioned earlier, vocational rehab may be able to provide support if it's in line with the goals established within the plan for the individual to find competitive employment. There are other little requirements and other things that they'll take you through, and every family is different, but it is possible that higher education could be covered by VR. So there's going to be, like I said, several pages of scholarships out here. One thing I like to mention here is if you adopted a child through the state of Texas, the DFPS, those adoptions, those kids go to school for free in Texas schools, okay? Texas state schools are not going to go for free at private school typically. But there's a lot of scholarships out there, lots of links out there. Again, create your spreadsheet. As from my perspective, and this might sound wrong, I only had so many hours in a day. So I was uninterested in $250 scholarships or $500 scholarships. I mean, what does that cover? One book. Some of those scholarships that are $250 or $500 or $750 one time, their applications are as long and ridiculous as the one that's going to be a full ride or $25,000, right? So I had to choose wisely on the ones that we were going to be applying for because of that time. The Terry Foundation is something that I love to tell people about. It's an awesome scholarship foundation. It's actually based in Houston. It's for Texas high school graduates. And it is really to make it to where most of their degree can be paid for by the Terry Foundation without them having to work. There's 11 public universities under the Terry Foundation. Where these are awarded for students that have leadership potential, show character, a decent scholastic record. It doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe they have a financial need. This is an awesome scholarship, and it is a full ride for 4 years. And even after you get it, you don't have to maintain a crazy, A only GPA. Some of these scholarships, you get the scholarship and they give it and they take it away because you have to have a 4.0 or something crazy. I think they wanted a C average with this scholarship, but this is an awesome scholarship. Think volunteering. What can your student do? So this is a scholarship that one of my kids got, and it was an awesome blessing. I mean, think, $150,000 or $200,000 to your pocket for your retirement that you're not going to have to pay for school. We had a lot of volunteer hours. From my perspective, I was thinking freshman year, okay, let's see. We're not in band. We don't sing. We don't play sports. We're not going to be in the top 5 or top 10%. Like, I was thinking of all the things that we aren't going to get, right? Well, what can we get? And so what I figured out was to get my kids volunteering, giving back in the community. So in a few meaningful organizations. I'm not saying your church. The church and volunteering at church is kind of a given. But what meaningful organizations can they get involved in? How many service hours can they get? That's where this is going to come into play. But this is totally worth looking at. It's only for Texans. It's the biggest scholarship foundation in the U.S. It's an awesome place. So check out their website. So think about your child life specialist at any of the children's hospitals or anything like that. They'll have a list of scholarships. Think of disease-based specific scholarships, diagnosis-based scholarships. Guys, there's scholarships for your neurotypical kids because they have a brother or sister with a disability. There is a ton of them out there. So prepare early. I know some families, they don't care. Grandma and grandpa's paying for college, or they have saved up plenty and they know that they have enough to cover the college, and they don't even want to fool with, the scholarship applications or things like that. And other families, they really need this. This is going to make the difference of their child going to college or not. So just really research these early. We've got pages and pages of scholarships. And again, you guys are going to get this presentation if you're joining us by podcast. Again, you can email us at contact@cpgcares.net, and we'll be happy to send you these slides. A recording of this presentation is going to live on our YouTube channel following this meeting, so you can go back and do a playback and view these as well. But I think it's best to have the slides with the links in there as well. Books to consider as you're traveling on this journey. It's an older book, but it's a great book. Colleges That Change Lives. There are a lot of schools out there that are really small class size, awesome professors and instructors that really work with students that need help. So look at the Colleges That Change Lives. The 5th Guide to Colleges, they update it every year. That's another good one. You guys can get those off of Amazon. When we start talking about, we talk about a lot of things on our webinars every given week. There's a lot of things that should be on your special needs planning radar: how to develop a special needs care plan, future care cost estimates. What are we looking at? How do we plan for the worst and hope for the best when it comes to our children? Waivers, Texas waivers, the Medicaid waivers, the interest list, how to get on them. SSI, SSDI, understanding the differences, knowing when to apply and what to apply for. Establishing an ABLE account. We've talked a little bit about guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision-making agreement, special needs trust. These are all topics that it seems like a lot. It seems like information overload. We do webinars on these topics every week, and our past webinars do definitely live on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to for free. It's the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. There'll be a link in the slides for that as well. But all of our past webinars are out there, and you can peruse the topics by title and see for the ones for the step that you're on. We definitely want you to stay in touch. April, we've got your contact information, and I think you have a couple of slides as well. So you guys are going to have April's contact information. So you've got more questions about some of the workforce solution stuff that she was talking about, you can definitely reach out to her. Even if you're not in her area, you can reach out to her. She can point you in the right direction as well.
Yeah.
So talk to us about some of these resources.
Okay, so this is a Padlet that I've put together, and it has several of the resources that if I were to meet you in person, I would give to you to help you. I put current webinars that I'm doing with you at Consolidated Planning. And then I also have other resources for you to figure out what vocational rehabilitation is and how to get connected and how to enroll and what the process looks like. And that's going to be right under that first column. So if you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide, I can talk about it just a little bit. We talked about pre-ETs. That's something that you'll hear a lot in the vocational transition world. And what does that really mean? It means that when you enroll for vocational rehabilitation, your counselor will start to go through a process with your child of career exploration. They're going to sit them down. They're going to figure out what are some of the things they like. Sometimes they'll do that by meeting with them. Sometimes they'll do it through a formal assessment or both. They'll do or offer work-based learning. In my area of Texoma, I have about 40 employers that I have worked with in order to set up training for students where they can begin to build their resume skills. Then the counselors can also do counseling on post-secondary options. And Allison had talked a lot about what some of those options are, whether they are for a certificate, a 2-year, 4-year program. The counselor is going to look at that first one, the career exploration and the skills that the student has, and at the third one here, and they're going to figure out what those gaps are, and they're going to build what's called an IPE. It's an individual plan for employment. I know a lot of people who have had ARD committees hear IEP, but they are two different things. The individual plan for employment is going to outline all of the services that vocational rehabilitation is going to offer to fill those gaps to help your student go from high school to the post-secondary option and all the way into employment. And then the other things they're going to be doing is work readiness and self-advocacy skills. And self-advocacy is such a huge one. I can tell you, I have not ever talked to a student or a family in person when I ask their student, do you know what self-advocacy is, that they've said yes. And that's for neurotypical students as well. They have a really hard time. And so being prepared for that, because just as Allison had mentioned earlier, when you go to college, you have to go to the Office of Disability not once, but every semester. And even if you've been at the Office of Disability, you may have to go to your professors and arrange individual accommodations with them as well. And that is usually the case. So those are some of the things and what pre-ETs and what they are. In order to access vocational rehabilitation services, you can go online and fill out a form. You can go here to the Job Seekers Vocational Rehabilitation Services link and access your vocational rehabilitation counselor. If you have trouble getting a hold of them, I'm glad to help you. And there are many more services that vocational rehabilitation offers in order to help your student go from point A to point B. But in short, I always like to point out to families, vocational rehabilitation is great for continuity, because when you're in high school, you have the ARD committees or the 504 counselor who's going to be working with you and working with your family. And that ends at the end of high school unless they're in an 18+ program. It's nice to have continuity because our counselors can actually join 504 meetings. They can be part of your ARD committee where they're talking about the employment portion and goals. And then they're going to be with you after high school. And once you have no longer the parental rights, it's nice to know that you've met somebody who's going to be standing in the gap with your child and who may even be willing to work with you, because you can sign a vocational rehabilitation waiver, or your child can, for you to be a part of those services and to participate within those meetings. So hopefully that helps give a little bit picture of the best kept secret.
One thing I do like to mention that I do think it is important, because a lot of parents want their kids to get in this program, and sometimes their kids don't want to. And so it is required that the kid is involved and that they're kind of a willing participant. That is part of the program. So it's not, even though the kid is a minor, and if they're really not willing to work the program or do what they're supposed to do, that is part of it. And I always just want to mention that, because sometimes as parents, we want what's best for our kids, and our kids don't always want what we think is best. So, so do you want to mention, do you have anything you want to add or take away on that?
Well, that is true. That's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I will say one other thing for parents who hear the age 14 and think, oh, graduation is so far away. It's never too late, but early is always better, because when you start vocational rehabilitation at the age of 14, you may only talk with your vocational counselor maybe once or twice a year to begin looking at those assessments, those skills, the traits with the student and what they want to do. But what will happen over time is you will build up a relationship with that counselor. They're going to know your child well. And when it's go time, as Allison would say, and you get into that sophomore, junior, senior year, when a lot more decisions are demanded of you and your student and demanded quickly, you're going to have already laid the groundwork to be better prepared to handle those.
April, we have a question. What is the general timeline from working with a high school counselor to hearing from your VR counselor?
Okay. So what will happen if you're applying through your high school, or you're talking with your high school counselor, if they do not know who your vocational counselor is, then I would say immediately get on one of those links that I have provided or reach out to me. Once you have done a VR application with your student, you should hear back within 1 to 2 weeks. And I say by week 3, if you don't hear, I have a format that I send out to you in an email. Make sure that you keep your last name and your case number if you do the Start My VR online, and you can be able to trail that with the information that I can send you via email.
And I see another one that says VR is different than transition specialist and expectation of the ARD committee in grade school, correct? And it is a totally different program. Sometimes these transition folks will recommend VR and pre-ETs or summer earn and learn and other things that might be part of their recommendations, but they don't work for Workforce Solutions or VR. They can connect you with those people. Is that correct, April?
That is correct. Every school has what's called a TED. It's a transition and employment specialist. And they often know about or work with the local vocational rehabilitation specialist, but they are 2 different programs, but they complement each other well.
Awesome. Well, April, we are out of time. The time goes by fast. We've got so much to talk about all the time. We're happy to connect with you if you have additional questions on planning for your special needs family, your loved ones. Reach out. Our consultations are always free. This QR code, you can click the link. It'll take you to a calendar that you can book yourself. Find our YouTube channel, Consolidated Planning Group. Subscribe to that. You can look up the past webinars from there, and you can always reach out to our office directly. Our initial consultations are always free, so we're happy to talk to you, take it offline, and answer any additional questions that you have. April, you're awesome, and it's always a pleasure to partner with you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today, and you will get an email later today with the slides and a link to the recording. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.